thank you all for coming out. Is this coming through? How does your mic sound?
I think it works.
All right, great. So yeah, I'm Shane. Nate, we're going to talk about virtual reality, which also happens to be the thing sitting on my head. We thought it would be a good way to introduce the technology. And here we are. This was about a year ago for both of us. Both total nerds. I was studying architecture at Middlebury. I graduated and decided to go into consulting. This is me playing with 3 different computers at once, figuring out how to do renderings for architects and designers, generally working with 3D for people in New England. Nate studied physics and math. And in this consulting job, we were doing a lot of visualizations, right? So this is a 3D model that I made for Connor Holmes. We photoshopped it into a photo, and then they use that to sell clients on projects. Nate was doing a lot of the back-end stuff. I was doing more of the front-end design, and we worked together a lot on that company. And then, about a year ago as well, I finally got my hands on this. And I'll let Nate sort of walk through the technology of the Oculus Rift.
Thanks, Shane. So this is the Oculus Rift, and just by way of introduction, it is a pretty goofy looking piece of hardware right now. This is a development kit, right? So this is really early and it's a prototype, and we were able to get our hands on one. You can go online and order them, but they're pretty limited. This is the second iteration of what will ultimately be a much sleeker looking device, right? But essentially what this is it's technology that's being developed for gamers. There's a screen right in the front here and a couple of lenses, and there's some sensors on the inside that are fairly inexpensive to track your motion, right? So as you look through you put this on.
It's beautiful.
I feel like a flight attendant. You put this on and you can actually see what's on the screen through the lenses, and the lenses warp the image on the screen so that as the image is projected on the back of your retinas, it provides a full field of view image into another world, right? So you can completely be immersed in some other place. And again, it tracks your head motion as you look around. So they had a pretty successful Kickstarter campaign, and really, it really took off. As you can see, 10 times what their goal was. And the reason being, I think, because the price point is very low, and ultimately the technology is pretty accessible to the masses. So that's what makes this device different than virtual reality that's come before it.
The Oculus is selling right now for $350. The headsets from the 90s were around $40,000, so it's a big price drop. And the main reason it took off, besides being immersive, was gamers got really excited about it. Their Kickstarter video, I think right up there, right? It says, "Step into the game." There's a big market for gamers, and people got really excited about it. Facebook bought Oculus Rift for $2 billion in April, so there was a lot of press around it then, too. So anyway, I was doing 3D work, doing consulting work. Nate and I were working together, and we saw right at the bottom here, it said the first truly immersive experience. And I thought, oh, I'm already working in 3D. Let's see if I can get one of my 3D files into the Oculus Rift. So I got my development kit. It was even an earlier one than that. And this is a model of the house I grew up in. And that's, I guess, the perk of having a son who does 3D modeling. My dad was doing a renovation, and I bundled up the house. And I thought, let's see if I can make a little video game out of the Oculus Rift and out of this model and walk through it. So this was the first file I ever made for a virtual reality walkthrough. And you can see it's tracking my head movement as I look through the space. It's the inside of my house. It's untextured. The lighting's pretty bad. It's all pixelated. Like, everything is essentially horrible about it, except for the fact that when I was in the goggles walking through the space, I really felt like I was standing in my house. And I couldn't believe it. Like, we were holding these goggles up to my face, and I felt like I was home. I remember my parents tried it on after that, and I said, oh, it's snowing out. And it's not snowing out. It's a white plane that goes into nothing. But the reason they said that is it feels like you're there, and the model's unfinished, but at the end of the day, you get a sense of scale and you get a sense of space. So that was pretty much the drop everything moment. We couldn't believe that you could get this from a 3D model. And then the question was, like, is this a company, and is someone else doing this, and like, what does this mean for our industry? So we kept making more files. I like this video because you'll see my head actually moving, and you'll see the camera tracking with with the movement. But we brought this in here because this is a lab in by Hall that we were made for a demo. What the question was at this point was, who's doing it in the industry, right? We're in architecture and 3D modeling. Is there someone taking 3D files and putting them into the Oculus Rift? And even more than that, this process is inherently horrible right now. To get from a 3D file, like the one I showed originally in my house, into the Oculus Rift, there's really a lot of time commitment. You have to import and export, and you essentially have to make a video game out of each file. And that kind of sucks. It's really, really time consuming, and it's finicky, and it generally breaks your computer. So we were thinking, how do we expedite this? How do we automate this? And we saw a need for software, specifically software that would take these architectural 3D files and put them immediately into VR without the need of a hands-on approach. And that was sort of the question we were asking is, can we build that? And it must have already been done. Who's doing it?
We embarked on this quest, right, to find a way to get 3D models into this hardware really easily. Tried to look for, software that automated it. It actually started out like, we really didn't even know how this whole thing was going to work. Was it going to require specialized hardware? Were we going to have to write something? Was somebody else doing it already? So we tried to figure this out, and this is before Shane had even gotten his hands on this. We started looking into the process of getting a digital model into virtual reality in a really efficient way. So Shane and I took off around the country pretty much to find that software and to find that solution and to get feedback from the industry and see if people actually wanted 3D models into virtual reality and if people were doing it, right? So we talked to people out in California. As you can see in the lower left-hand corner there, we played with different solutions in an office here in Middlebury and hacked together a bunch of different demos to get 3D models, as I was saying, 3D models into virtual reality. And the demand, there seemed to be a pretty wide demand for an automated process, an easy process, and nobody else was doing it early this spring. And we realized pretty quickly that not only was there demand, but that we could build an entire suite of tools to pull 3D assets into virtual environments with just the click of a mouse.
So we showed a lot of architects, and that was, literally what Nate was talking about is we sat down and Googled first to see if we had something. Google didn't procure anything, so then we started traveling. But we found pretty quickly that architects in particular, this is Doran Whittier up in Burlington, and engineers and people that work with unbuilt space and getting those things built, we're really excited about our stuff. We'd go in with, there's a little black briefcase that holds the Oculus Rift. We'd walk into firms like Gensler and Perkins Will, and these are the biggest firms in the world. We were welcomed with lots of skepticism, but once the goggles were put on their faces, they said, oh my God, we have XYZ client that doesn't understand what they're getting with the space, and we would love to show them the goggles so that they can walk through it and get it. So we've showed, I think, in person around 500 architects and professionals at this point, and we were really validated between January and April of this year of people saying, like, how do we buy your software? And we were like, well, we need to build software. We don't have software yet. And so as a result, we built our team. This is a reaction to we had an applicant who started working for us, our chief marketing officer, who gave us a profile shot like this, so we thought we had to do it as well. So we built the team, and then we built a beta product, and that's sort of where the company is at right now. We're early stage beta. We really should call it a prototype, where people can drag and drop their files and view it in VR. And that was sort of that was the company in a nutshell, right? That was the span from idea stage to like, can we do this, to validated, to being like, yes, like this is, people want it. And now we're kind of at that stage of like pacing, and when does this take off, and when does this become the company, not just a company. And it gets into sort of this larger pain point in design that I get really excited about, and I can talk for hours with Nate about and bore him about, is that when you're dealing with unbuilt space, or really any space, like designing this concert hall, you're inherently going to be sitting around a table with stakeholders who don't quite get it. And they're going to be signing off on a project by looking at plans, by looking at renderings and animations. But at the end of the day, those are metaphors of space. They're extrapolations of how the space is going to feel. Your brain's left to figure out what happens. But what virtual reality does is totally takes that barrier away. It's no longer a metaphor. It just feels like you're there. And I think that fundamental difference in technology, and it's a very new difference in technology, is very exciting. And it's very exciting for design as a whole, capital D design. but also just understanding of space, which can get much larger than this. And yes, we have very happy architects. So ultimately, I mean, that gets into, we go back and forth on our tagline. I think it's inhabit your designs right now for our company. But that ultimately is the idea of inhabiting, but someone inside something. And that is very powerful interface with technology.
So, and the reason that I like the word inhabit is I think it really gets across what this does, right? And it's so hard to describe in words how immersive this experience is. And when I say this experience, this is a development kit, and it's only sort of a glimpse of what is to come. But I was sort of a virtual reality skeptic, right? I thought, well, you know, it's sort of a gimmick, but you know, and it kind of makes people sick. You get kind of this nauseous motion.
Nate gets really sick.
Bad. I get really
Yeah.
yeah, I can't use it for more than about 5 minutes, so that's a little embarrassing because I have a VR company. But anyway, so it's I tried a demo that was made by a gaming company out in California called Valve. They have a hardware headset that's much higher performance than this, and I tried it on. And they put me in a pretty cool room. And then I tried another demo where I was standing on the edge of a skyscraper, right? But I didn't realize that at first. I was looking out at this beautiful cityscape. And it was pretty neat. I was out in a room in California, and you know, I knew that I was in this small little like cubicle-sized room, but you know, it was cool. I was looking around, and then I looked down at my feet, and I was on this ledge at the top of this skyscraper. And even though I knew I was in that little room in California, my stomach jumped, and my legs tensed up, totally involuntarily, and I felt like I was there. I mean, it was the first time that I really, really felt like I was there in a way that I can't describe. And that's what convinced me that virtual reality really can convey an idea of a space and a place in a new way and transport you to another place and bring other places to a little room in California, say, right? And that, I think there's going to be a fundamental difference in how we talk about space, how we share space with each other and communicate 3D ideas in the coming weeks, months, and years. And that demo gave me a glimpse into the technology and what's to come, and the fact that this is going to hit the market soon, and what we're trying to do with our software, I'm convinced that virtual reality is going to be more and more accessible.
And this marks a growing trend, and this is sort of what we're going to leave you guys with. This marks a really exciting and growing trend in technology as a whole. These were all products that were announced or came out in 2014, some in 2013, I guess, too. And so structure sensor, it's going to measure your space with your iPad. It's a 3D scanner. Google Tango, which is out of Google Labs. It's a smartphone that will allow you to scan, you know, wherever you're at, and you can interact with it. Magic Leap, no one knows what they're doing, but they've raised $550 million from Google, so they're doing something right. And Oculus, of course, which we've been talking about. But all of these devices, fundamentally, they're no longer, there are handheld devices, there are personal devices, but they're no longer showing us projections. They're no longer like screens that we look at. They're actually trying to inhabit our space with us and interact with our space. And I think that that's ultimately what we're so excited about, is that we have this new wave of technology that deals with immersive and inhabiting and feeling immersive in space. And I think that that's going to change all of our lives in the future. Thank you.